the most exclusive part of the business, business law.
And we are back with a new episode on Business Law Toolbox podcast. Today we're going to talk about 5 common mistakes to avoid when you're about to sell your company. We have Kat here. So the first one, what should you think about before sharing your information?
In particular, when you're the first-time seller, right, and you get approached by a buyer, you might be eager to start sharing information, discussing strategies, because you're excited. And you need protection, contractual protection. That is the NDA.
The NDA.
Non-disclosure agreement. Because that protects you in case the deal does not happen, or in any other incidents for that matter, so that the information is not misused. So you need to protect your business sensitive information, right? So that's number 1. Make sure you have the NDA in place.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, before you share information, is to check if the potential buyer is in the same industry, if he is a competitor.
Okay, what can happen then?
Because competition law says that competitors may not share information that can hinder or have a negative effect on the open competition.
Okay, interesting.
So, for example, a price strategy. If you run a gym and I run a gym, and I share with you, well, next year we're going to lower our prices so everybody will have the same membership and it will look like this. Then that can mean that you can adjust your price strategy. So instead of us competing, which would be the best for the end customer, right? We will, in a way, cooperate due to me sharing information with you. So if the potential buyer is in the same industry, you need to pause and discuss how you can do it in a compliant way.
Okay, is that what is called the anti-competition law?
Yeah, or antitrust.
Antitrust.
Yeah, both.
Okay, so that's very important before you share information.
Exactly. So just stop and think.
Okay, I think it's very common to share information because isn't it common that companies that are in the same industry that buy each other?
Exactly. So that's why it's so important to know that you're not allowed to share information, even if you would say that, well, we didn't mean to work against competition laws. We just meant to see if you wanted to buy me. So that's why you need to kind of be mindful. You can share the information, of course, because companies in the same industry can buy each other. But you need to do it in a step-by-step and a structured way that makes sure that you kind of you work against these negative effects that could otherwise occur.
Okay, and that takes us to number 2. What should you think about before signing a term sheet?
Well, the term sheet, like we went through in a specific episode about term sheets, is overall non-binding, but it has some binding clauses.
That was the tricky part.
Yeah, and if we start by looking at the non-binding, they will address the main terms and conditions of the deal, including price, which, of course, as a seller, you care about. And what you should know is that even if they're non-binding, typically, they will be inserted into the final agreement. So you should not take them too lightly.
Okay.
If you don't like them, don't sign the term sheet.
Okay, so you can take them to the next step.
Yeah, you should take them rather serious. You should not sign, we'll negotiate that later.
Mm.
And as regards the binding part, you should watch out for a breakup fee, and you should watch out for exclusivity.
What does that mean? The exclusivity part.
Yeah, we can address that. That means that the buyer wants you to promise that you will not negotiate with any other buyer. And if you're approached by that buyer, perhaps he's a competitor, a bigger competitor in the same industry, and he approaches you and asks if you're interested to discuss a sale, and he brings the term sheet, and it has exclusivity on it, you might stop and think, okay, my company might actually be rather attractive. I might make some calls and check perhaps somebody else wants to buy me at a much higher price. So there might be a reason why he's pushing for that exclusivity. So just stop and think if this is really the best buyer you can find. And also see how long the exclusivity period is for. Is it for 2 weeks or is it for 6 months? That will also affect if you can accept it or not.
Oh, thank you. That's so interesting. And that takes us also to number 3. Before you involve your staff.
Well, the buyer will want to investigate the company. He will want to know the risks, the problems, the value, the intellectual property, everything about your company. And that will mean that there will be work to do on your side to make sure he has all of the documentation, gets all of the answers, and so forth. So you will need to involve your staff more often than not. And if you imagine that you're the CFO or the HR manager, and you find out that, oh, we're about to get sold, and we're about to get sold to a competitor, I don't think my job will remain. They have their own HR manager or their own CFO. I better go look for a new job directly.
So it can cause a lot of insecurity.
And even staff leaving.
Oh.
And what if the deal does not go through? And you need your staff, right? So that can be really just creating worry and stress, and even worst case scenario, people leaving. And you should also know that some of the buyers might only buy the company due to the top talent you have in the company.
Interesting.
So you might really need to sit down and think, how can I get my key personnel excited about this deal? So they help me, so they want it to happen. Incentivize them.
Good communication strategy.
And perhaps even some
money.
Yeah.
And yes, and that takes us to the next part, which is number 4. And before you go to the market with your company, what should you think of then?
Well, when you start a company, you're typically very focused on getting it running, getting it profitable, making everything work, growing. So you might not think of all of the different aspects that would be a legal risk or all of the documentation you need. You might not have everything in place. That's completely normal. But if you go to the market with your company with a lot of risks and problems, that might deter a number of buyers. Even if it's fixable problems, they might say, oh, I don't want to wait 6 months. I'll find another company. Or they'll say that, okay, but the management, they don't seem to bring their A game. There's too much confusion. So what you can do is you can do a vendor due diligence and have a look at your own company and see what problems can I fix before I go to the open market in order to get a higher price and get more buyers interested in the company.
Oh, you call it a vendor due diligence. Okay.
A bit like when you're about to sell your home, and perhaps the real estate agent says that, well, if you repaint and we stage it, the buyers will have an easier time to see the beauty of your house and they will bid more. A bit the same.
Okay, so you have to fix some things to get it more attractive and so on.
It can be very helpful, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that takes us to number 5, which is the questions to answer about the due diligence. And we talked about due diligence in another episode and we explained it. So what should you think about in that case?
Well, yeah, like you said, the due diligence is the buyer investigating the company before he really decides to buy and before he decides what price, final, right?
Yeah.
So as a seller, you might want to be very positive. You might want to even sugarcoat some problems. And that's really, really, really risky. Because that can lead to the buyer having claims against you once he has taken control of the company. Because you will need to sign reps and warranties stating that everything is disclosed fully proper for the buyer and that everything else is in order from taxes to HR issues, intellectual property. So your best protection in the transaction and in order not to get claims against you is to provide as much information as you ever can. So be super, super transparent, because then it will be priced in already. And the buyer can't, or it will be extremely hard for him to come after you later on, because he already knew about it, right?
Yes. So honesty is key.
Very much so. And also, I can add that don't worry, no company is perfect. So
That's good to know.
yeah, exactly. No.
Yeah.
So it's more impressive to say, you know what? We discovered we have this problem, and we discussed this, and we addressed it, and we changed. We put somebody on this process. So you show that you recognize the problem and you're dealing with it. That's the best way to attract a buyer.
So honesty. Thank you. It's very interesting listening to this. We talked about the 5 mistakes to avoid when you are about to sell your company in this episode. And thank you for explaining it so well.
So it is complicated. It's also important to know